Hey guys, welcome back to the Optimal Physique Development Podcast with your hosts Joe Jeffrey and Austin Stout. We are up to episode 26 and it's just me and Austin today. We did have a guest coming on. Well, we're actually recording this now on Sunday night. We had a guest lined up for Wednesday. The guest had to pull out and then I got really ill Wednesday night. Which is unusual for me, so I couldn't go ahead with the podcast anyway, and we've only just managed to get around to it now, so apologies guys that do listen every Friday, although nobody asked me where the podcast was, so it doesn't look like anybody was too worried, but we're getting it done now, so apologies for the delay. But Austin, how's the prep going?
Good. Yeah, I mean, the important thing is the results are where they need to be. Everything else is just what you got to do to get there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody in the group's really liking the updates you've been doing, man. And it seems like the low-calorie questions have disappeared, actually, so you've helped some people.
Yeah.
People seem to be understanding.
Yeah, and I think it's like every prep that I do, I think people forget that that's typically like my normal prep. So I get the questions and then, within a few weeks or so, people are like, oh yeah, they get used to it. And there's always the whole metabolic damage for about 2 weeks. And then everyone's like, oh wait, you can actually eat these low calories and you won't lose all your muscle and die. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if I can help someone.
I've been using... Sorry, say that again?
I said I'm glad to be able to help clear up the confusion with my own misery.
Yeah, well, it's been helpful for me. Like we were speaking about the other day, I had a client that was complaining about not eating much and sort of, oh, should I really only have to eat this much to lose this weight? Surely I should be eating more. Is there something wrong with my metabolism or something? And I just sent him your way, tagged him in the update, and he got back to me later that day like, yeah, sorry, I was just being a bitch, man. Because he's quite literally eating twice as much as you. It's not a prep or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a photo shoot that he's going for. He's pretty lean, but we're not talking contest lean, so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta. It's when we post this stuff and we talk about it. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's situations where people do undereat unnecessarily. Like, they don't need. They do have metabolic adaptations that are beyond what they should be. But our point is that there is a time and a place where it's just there's really no way around it, and you're not going to you're not going to inherit some long-term damage as long as you come out of it correctly. So,
yeah.
And I'll document that too. So because that's always interesting too, is seeing the post-show period and what I do there, because I mean, I think that's equally as important when you are putting your body in this really down-regulated state, So.
I mean, it's so contextual, isn't it? And so, I mean, compared to how hard you're pushing it as well, not everybody needs to go that low calories. Not everybody should, but people can, and they may have to. Like this client I'm talking about, we're doing something pretty aggressive. He's in a big deficit because he's got a time frame that he needs to adhere to, and it came quite late from a sponsor saying you need to be ready for this date, so it's what we're having to do. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that,
Right. No.
Had a pretty bad situation as well where, I mean, it was strange because his weight was dropping, but there was clearly some adaptation happening, so we implemented some 48-hour surplus periods, which did seem to help, but I mean, weight loss was occurring, but not. He was absolutely negatively adapting past the point that it made sense. So went and got some blood work done. It turned out that the exogenous thyroid supplementation that he was using was complete bunk, and he was pretty much in the shitter with his thyroidal axes, which explained a lot. So that kind of sucks, man. But yeah, off topic now.
It happens though,
So how many weeks out are you right now?
See, today's Sunday's almost over, so tomorrow would be 2 weeks and 5 days. So that's close. Like you know, don't get me wrong, like everything's hard and it doesn't get any easier, but you get to a point, you know, you're assuming you're not way behind, that you're pretty close to ready, and it's just kind of, you know, it's just monotonous stuff for the next couple weeks. I mean, we have, I think realistically, maybe like 2 pounds of fat left, a little bit off my glutes, and that's it. I mean, you can't, there's not really fat anywhere else at this point. So,
yeah, you're pretty much there. You're pretty much there for sure, from what we've seen. So do you think you're going to maybe eat up a little bit closer to the show, or just practice peaking next week or something like that?
well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna practice the peak. I actually, because I posted that the other day, and it was total, it was error on my end, because I I thought that I was 2 weeks out, and I was actually 3, and I was like, oh fuck, you know. So gonna probably do a trial peak run next week, but man, honestly, like I don't think I've lost hardly any, if any, muscle tissue. So at this point, like to me, it seems like why not just get as lean as possible, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm with you.
There's no, I mean, you could just back off, of course, but why, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
for me personally, I don't think that it's necessary. So we'll probably just run with it all the way. I think the biggest thing will probably be like just managing inflammation, you know, from all the cardio and stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Pulling cardio out will be probably the biggest thing towards the end, just because, I mean, I am doing a good amount, and it is inherently going to be pretty inflammatory. So if anything, that's just going to make me look better though. So.
Oh yeah, getting the hit out especially.
Right. Yeah. All the hit cardio, and you get to a point too where if you are doing enough steady state cardio that you are, I mean, your legs they're like cement, you know. I mean, they just,
yeah.
So I would rather pull the cardio than eat more at this point.
I feel you, man. Yeah. I'm quite impressed that you're still doing your podcast, and you're still coaching to a high level as well, and producing content and stuff. Like, fair play, man. But
yeah, that was a question, you know, and I get that in updates sometimes too, where they're like, you know, I appreciate you maintaining your service while I know what you're doing, and I almost tell them, I'm like, I'd rather you not say that, you know. I don't want you to feel, because I don't want it to seem like someone should feel sorry for me, and I don't think that anyone should feel sorry for any coach, you know what I mean? Like it's just like any job. If you're in a prep and it's a hard prep, I couldn't imagine someone who has like an important corporate job and they're like, hey, I'm calling off because I'm in contest prep and I feel bad, you know. You know what?
mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't. There's people that have demanding jobs that if their performance slips, that could cost them their job, whether they're prepping or not, you know. So I don't think that it's any different. I just, don't get me wrong, it's extremely difficult. Like these days are really long, and it's I just try not to think about it, you know, just do it. So
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I mean, it gives you, I mean, you have to have your brain somewhere when you're that deep in prep as well. I mean, I find like clients that say to me like, yeah, I think I'm going to take the next couple of weeks off work and just relax and stuff. I'm like, fuck no, don't do that. Like, your NEAT's going to drop. You're going to end up laying around all day. You're going to be thinking about food because you've got nothing else to keep your brain on, you know. Stay busy as you can that close to the show.
Yeah, I think what I've done in past years, it's just I'll literally do everything fairly normally up until, you know, the night of, if I have to check in and do all that stuff, or maybe the day before if I have to pack and things. I mean, I might compact my updates a little earlier in the week, but I mean, I'll still, even Friday night before the shows last year, I jumped on, checked, you know, clean my emails and stuff out, because I had just something to occupy my brain, you know.
Yeah, I remember last year we were talking the day of your show. You did a Q&A, and I came on and I said, like, what are you doing? Just go and chill out. You know.
I might have. I don't remember. I probably did.
You did, yeah. You were doing a live, because I remember I was driving
Oh, yeah.
and I had it on my headphones.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, it's not. you don't want to do anything stressful, but at the same time, you don't want to sit there and maybe not think about food at that point, but think about like, I'd rather not think about like going on stage and over analyzing because you're ready, just keep your mind occupied. So,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you competed when the PCA older shot was on over here last year, because I think that's where I was driving to. So that would have been maybe just over a year ago now.
yeah, it was early June, I think. So a little over a year.
Yeah. Did you manage to catch any of the London Two Bros Pro show over here that was on yesterday?
Did they have it? I'm not sure if I did or not. I think that I follow that Maximum Muscle Report on IG because they're really good at all the coverage, but I don't know if they had it or not.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I've seen mixed reports on it. I mean, from what I saw, it was a great show. They had like tons of competitors. It was some very competitive classes. They were awesome. The female classes were really cool.
Was it amateur?
It overrun. Say again.
I'm sorry. Was it an amateur and pro or?
So the Two Bros Pro is the amateur federation over here in the UK. It's now the only fed that has a sort of main line to compete IFBB down the road.
Right.
So you can qualify to compete IFBB eventually through the Two Bros Pros. But it overran a ton. I mean, I think the bodybuilders didn't get on until like midnight or something crazy.
That's a long day.
But everybody that I've spoken to today that competed there said it was a great show and it was well ran. It just overran. But
they'll probably split it up in coming years. They've done that here with some shows. You just never know, and then you have to kind of modify the schedule for the next year.
Yeah, I think Jazz is kind of made up on swapping over to Two Bros Pro this year from the PCA.
We've been talking about it too,
I mean, it's a good idea.
They're
very different looks.
Well, and she's like, and she talked about, obviously I'm looking way ahead, but let's say she wanted to pursue like eventually, being, going into the IFBB. I mean, if you're going to do any kind of anything with a pro status, I mean, there's really not any comparison IFBB and anything else. You know what I mean? It's just not, that's the place to be if you're going to do it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Did you want to get onto these questions then?
Yeah.
I haven't actually looked at them.
There was a few more added since the other day, but
okay, I've got them here.
By the way,
I can take it.
I have I'll tag you in it too. You'll like this. I did a photo shoot this morning out in the barn gym.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I got some pretty sick photos too. So I'm a good friend of mine.
I bet, man.
Yeah, you'll like them.
Have you posted them up yet?
No, he's actually just messaged me now with some drafts and stuff because he's going to edit them all up. But I'll just post like a couple shots, like a preview or something.
Yeah. Or send them, just forward them on or something.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
Okay, I got the questions here. Do you want me to roll off the first one?
Go ahead.
Mark Rhodes is asking gyno, whilst running a cycle of 200 milligrams testosterone, 300 milligrams masterone, 700 milligrams nandrolone phenylpropionate, 600 milligrams anavar per week, gyno is flaring up. Are there additional factors, lifestyle factors? How would you go about getting it under control with single figures left to the show? So that's going to be the most important part of this question for me, with single figures left to the show, because it doesn't leave the leeway of hormonal stack manipulation and assessment for somebody that I'd be working with to address these symptoms. But like what I'd say from the offset is don't run stacks into your show that you haven't already experimented with and already know that androgen to estrogen ratio balance and, you know, amount of E2 to DHT ratio doesn't work for you anyway, when, you know, you don't need it messing up at that point. But yeah, we can dig into this. So, you know, what is gyno? It's estrogen binding at the nipple gland, you know. What can exacerbate it? Androgens and estrogens out of balance. I'm not convinced that either prolactin nor progesterone can cause actual granular tissue development to any degree. What I would do, Mark, if you were my client here, is increase because of how close you are to the show. When you say single figures, I mean single figure weeks, right?
That could be 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's hard to say. Let's just assume like around 4 weeks to the show. I assume that you're pulling out the nandrolone, maybe pulling out the testosterone. You know, there's going to be things happening to your hormonal stack that is going to be modulating it that could fix the gyno anyway. So it's a bit of a difficult question. But modulating the estrogen to androgen ratio, it's a fairly low androgen stack. So I would maybe increase the masterone dose there on the offset, or add in some proviron, maybe 50 to 100 milligrams a day, just to push your total DHT up. Because for that amount of nandrolone, you got 700 milligrams of nandrolone in there, so that's going to be quite a lot of DHN conversion, that preferentially maybe binding over DHT, as it has a higher binding affinity. Your estrogen is probably sufficient at that dose of nandrolone plus testosterone, but it's a fairly low DHT stack. I would increase the DHT element, and therefore the androgen elements. I'd probably bump up the masteron to at least 500 milligrams there and assess.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. That's really the only thing that's probably going to help at this point. Assuming too he's running like a masteron propionate, it should work. If it's going to work, it should work relatively quickly. But I mean, like I said, the context is a little sketchy just because we don't know the actual weeks. I mean, if you're a week out, then I hate to say it, but I'm not sure that it might do something. But I mean, if you're a few weeks out and you increase the DHT, I mean, I would say you probably have a pretty marked effect in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're probably going to be pushing up the androgens and pulling down the estrogens anyway, right. You know, narrowing that ratio as you get closer to a show, as pretty much everybody does, so it's going to happen anyway, you know?
Yep, I agree. And you made a good point too, just about not running stacks that you don't have experience with. I mean, that's not to say that he doesn't, maybe he does, but yeah, I mean, you're running 3, 4, 5, 6 compounds, and just from a mechanistic standpoint, I mean, you're looking at ratio from a lot of angles. You know what I mean? You might have a progesterone compound, you might have a DHT compound, you might have a primary, testosterone to estrogens. I mean, there's a lot in play there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, the off season's a good time to monitor your DHT and E2 levels on blood work and see where you find a good ratio. There are like some good ratios in my experience that I have found, but it's very individual. I did make some notes on this from a client the other day that I'm actually looking for. I wrote down some DHT and E2 ratios because I've been playing with these high nandrolone stacks with clients and myself, and finding out where DHT generally wants to sit to prevent the lethargy that comes from the DHN preferentially binding I know that's got nothing to do with gyno, but
That's another thing
and
too. Actually, if you are prone to something like this and you are experimenting in the off season, actually have DHT levels checked because hardly anyone does. I mean, figure out which ratios, look at your estrogen, testosterone, DHT, like figure out um, how you look and feel at certain ratios, and you can obviously use that information later. Because I mean, rarely do you see anyone even look at DHT on labs. So
yeah, something I'm getting into, actually pushing up E2 to a point and finding a good ratio with DHT for me for hypertrophy has become something that's quite important. I can't find these notes right now, but it's got nothing to do with the question anyway. It'll just be me rambling, but that's something we can talk on the future as sort of manipulating the effect on neurotransmitters from 19-nor compounds to prevent tiredness and stuff like that from nandrolone use that comes from the DHM preferentially binding. Anyway, roll on to the next question. I think we covered that. Haley Slack, what is DSIP and how can it help R&R? So rest and recovery. You can take that, Austin, if you want.
correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you give this a run for a while?
Yes, yeah. So it's delta sleep inducing peptide, DSIP. It's a neuropeptide. I think it was originally synthesized, and they used it on like cell cultures or like I think blood cell cultures of rabbits or something like that to induce sleep. Apparently to promote slow wave sleep in rabbits. I've read all the human research on this, and it's all pretty crap, and none of it was statistically significant, and I didn't find it did anything for me, so I would say don't bother.
Yeah, I agree. I've not. I did quite a bit of research on it too. Actually, that was one of the things. I got into the whole sleep topic for a while. You know, when you get interested in something, you research it. So I think it was right around when I wrote that article, and I literally found no human research that would even intrigue me to use it, to be honest.
Well, I was quite interested that there even was human research on it, but there is in chronic insomniacs, and it was well within the range of just like placebo.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, though. I mean, I'm pretty sure from some of the research it was done in like the 1970s. So, I mean, it's been around a bit. You know?
Yeah, it was first synthesized in the 70s. So the animal research would have been done there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, not something I'd recommend bothering with, Haley. Next question. Joe Jeffrey, have you ever had an eye injury? Actually, I don't know why you're asking this, Gary, but I have a repetitive eye injury that I do every fortnight or so. I burst a blood vessel in my right eye all the time when I'm training. I'm not sure you'd call that an injury, but I do it all the time.
Can you see? Is it visible in photos or videos or something? I guess I've never noticed it.
If you zoom in on some of my check-ins, you'll see it.
Gotcha.
If I lift up my right eyelid, you can see where this blood vessel is that I always pop. It's almost like scarred. Pretty much every time I rack pull or do big cluster sets for quads. I mean, anyone that's trained with me knows this. I'm like a big nasal breather. I don't breathe out my mouth at all. When I sleep, I don't open my mouth, and I only breathe out my nose when I train. It's just a habit, and I really like Valsalva really hard. Like, I'll suck in a huge amount of air through my nose and brace really hard. It's just a habit when I train. And if I'm doing like a rack pull or squats or this banded leg press that's been getting me recently, it's just the pressure just bursts and it just makes me cry blood pretty much. I don't know if you'd call that an injury because it's not painful or anything, but I don't know, maybe Gary's noticed it in photos or something. So yeah, but it's not really an injury, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. Like I said, I've never noticed. It's not, and that's not really inherently dangerous. No, well, I'm not going to say that. I mean, it's probably not dangerous.
No, it doesn't bother me. It's always there. It's either that or like don't train them. Like fuck that. So.
Yeah.
Next one. Client issues with body image. This could tangent off to if you'll, we don't say that word over here, worked with anyone with prior eating disorders. What's the question? Client issues with body image. I don't really know what the question is. That's more of like a discussion point. It's from Cade. Client issues with body image. I don't know what the question is, mate.
Well, I mean, I would say any coach that's worked with a fair amount of clients is going to run into it. It's inevitable.
Every competitor on the planet has a body image issue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everyone with neurotic approaches to changing their physique, anyone that will take it to the point of using drugs to change their physique has a body image issue, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, yeah, definitely. And it goes back to what we often say about part of being a good coach is being able to read the context of the client and knowing how to respond to them as an individual, whether they require a dry, harsh approach or whether they need spoon feeding and whatnot. Depends on their level of body image disruption, you could say.
And what I can say too, just from experience and knowledge in the field, is that there's a point where that the body image issue is useful, and there's a point where it's very deleterious to your health and to your goals. So I mean, you got to have, like, deciding where that line is the biggest thing. And if you're working with a coach, hopefully they're able to identify that, because typically the person with the issues not going to be, they're going to have bias. So you just have to figure out how to make it work for you. I don't necessarily, some people might argue with me on this, but I don't necessarily think that it's bad to have something like that to an extent, as long as you know how to make it productive and not
exactly.
So, and it can certainly, and it's a learning curve, I mean, shit, I used to be quite the opposite, but now I think I use the OCD type personality is quite useful. So I mean, yeah, just depends. It's all contextual.
Yeah, and we're both like that. We're both very like OCD individuals, but yeah, it's how you use it. It's whether you allow it to increase your perceived stress or you use it to your advantage to increase your ability to achieve your goals and harness it.
I really agree.
There's a fine line.
Yep.
Okay. Next question. So that was from Cade Gilbert. Next question is from Samuel James Maxey. I don't know if you're going to want to answer this one, Austin. I might take this one.
Okay.
What led you to decide to go the enhanced bodybuilder route?
I can tell you.
Where the
my answer
events. I mean, our answer is the same, pretty much, isn't it? I assume.
My answer is really easy on that one, actually. But yeah, you can go ahead and start.
Well, the whole question was, what led you to go the enhanced bodybuilder route? Were there events in your life that changed your mindset in regards to taking the health risks associated with being enhanced? Or did it start off as just taking gear to look better? So go ahead and take what you can of that, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my answer to that is actually pretty simple. Up until a certain point, I had done research and gathered a good understanding on the topic and how, just the physiology and how certain compounds worked and what have you. But I truthfully I hadn't considered it. I mean, I wasn't opposed to it. I wasn't for it. I really didn't have an opinion on it because I was successful at competing naturally at the time, and I had certain goals in that realm. So it wasn't on my priority list. I said, oh, and in a year I'm going to switch or whatever. So I hadn't really got to that point. What took me there was, truthfully, was just I had to get prescribed TRT for medical purposes, and it was a necessity in my case. So obviously, at that point, according to the rules of pretty much every natural federation, you cannot compete. And so, I mean, that was that. I mean, and even then, when I was prescribed the hormone replacement, there was a period there too where it was more like, oh, I just want to feel better and get healthy. And when you walk around with, when you walk around with downregulated hormones for long enough, even just starting TRT, I mean, your physique's going to change quite a bit. So it just kind of evolved that way out of necessity, really, because I wanted to keep competing, and that was kind of what I needed to do. So.
Yeah, cool. Well, pretty much the same for me. I was on prescribed TRT.
Yeah.
When I was 19, and then I didn't use any super physiological dosages of androgens until I was 21. So I was on TRT prescribed for 2 years before I experimented any further with any other compounds, including anabolics, peptides, insulin growth hormone, whatever. To answer the rest of it, I mean, I was always studying performance enhancing drugs because it was always something that I was into. I was into biochemistry. I was on the boards and I was reading the research papers and whatnot for years before I actually got into it myself. Were there events in your life that changed your mindset? No, because I was never ethically opposed to it anyway. I love bodybuilding, and bodybuilding doesn't exist without drug use. That's a fact. My personal goals have always been outside the reach of what is possible physiologically in a human, so I have to use the drugs to reach my personal goals anyway, and that's a decision that I've come to peace with myself. In regards to taking the health risks, that's something that you've got to weigh up yourself, the risk and reward. I am somebody that has used more on the higher end of drugs and experimented with drugs a lot more than maybe anybody ever should, but that's what I do, and I accept the risks, and that's that. Did it start off as you taking gear to just look better? No, I was on prescribed TRT, but now, of course, yes, my anabolic use is centered around physique development. So that's that. I think ultimately this question comes down to deciding the risk to reward ratio and whether it lies within your favor, and that's something only you are going to be able to answer for yourself.
Yeah.
Essentially. And then what degree that you take your experimentation to, because I know great bodybuilders that have never stepped outside of harsh realms and never had bad blood work, and I know bodybuilders that really do push it for years and years on end, and some people just need to and some people don't, so weigh that up yourself.
Yep.
Next question. Do you believe someone taking the enhanced route can live a relatively long life into their 70s and 80s? Yeah, because they have. Many of them have. So,
yeah, I mean,
yes.
That's I don't think that's not really a big talking point. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You can, but you could certainly, with that said, I mean, you could absolutely shorten your lifespan. Let's not sugarcoat it.
Oh, well, yeah, I'd say that you absolutely are shortening your lifespan.
Yeah,
without question.
I would agree to, for the most part. I mean, yeah, and that's the thing too, is that people are just, you get two extremes where people make it seem worse than it is, or people that try to kind of tiptoe around it and make it sound like it's not bad as long as you take certain precautionary measures. I mean, there's always risk. There's always.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that is quite frustrating because, yeah, there are people on two sides of the coin that say, steroids never killed anybody, but
Well, no, I mean,
you
you
know.
can't. You can inject an entire vial of something like right on the spot. It's not going to kill you, but
No, exactly.
that's not the point.
No. Next question. Who are the best role models / mentors you have had as far as your educational approach to bodybuilding coaching? So do you want to take that?
Yes. I might be in the minority is to say, and this isn't like an ego thing or anything. It's just I've done nearly everything on my own. I don't know why that was. I just, yeah, I didn't. I can't say that I've actually followed, one person or multiple people religiously over the years and could gather a lot of information. It's just been so many different sources. Now, um, I will say that my early coaching experiences had helped me a lot. I think that's the way a lot of people learn. It's just getting coached and seeing outside perspective and stuff. So I learned a lot from Jason Theobald, who we're still good friends, who's helping me finish up my prep now. So he, yeah, I mean, he was the first person that coached me. Luckily, I had found someone that was knowledgeable and got the right influence right off the bat versus having to weed through a bunch of the BS and find good influence. So yeah, I mean, that was extremely helpful. And that was actually probably one of the reasons I decided that I wanted to be a coach, because I liked, I just liked the way that he conducted himself and the way he did things and the way that I'm like, I can do this, found that I can make money at it, pursued it. But I wouldn't, beyond that point, I wouldn't say that I necessarily was like, yeah, this person, I followed every single thing that they did and learned everything I could from them, because literally I pieced things together from so many perspectives. And and I'm sure you'll agree on this too, is that that's like when somebody asks a question, what's a good book to learn about this? Or what's a good, the thing is, learning about all this is you're going to have to literally scour every inch of every resource. It's not, you're not going to find one person or one book or one article or one website or anything that's going to give you what you need, because there is so much and there is so much context.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I almost, unfortunately, got the opposite end, where I learned a lot of what not to do initially with early coaches.
Yeah.
A lot of what I learned was just through my own research, my own anecdote, because I was coaching for free for years before I started charging. I was coaching for about 4 years before I began to charge. So a lot was anecdote compiled with spending hours and hours and hours and hours every day on bodybuilding boards and following other good coaches like yourself. And obviously we've worked through stuff together quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people like Jason that I used to follow on RX and things like that. I mean, I've learned so much from so many different people, but it's generally I'll take things that make sense to me, trial them, take my own anecdote from it, manipulate it, and then use it as my own. I can't say there's any one person that I've agreed with like everything and just utilized their theory or their tools. It's usually a big amalgamation of things that I've trialed over the years,
Yeah, and what you notice too is that the longer you do it, not entirely shifts, but to an extent, your learning shifts from reading and researching to experience-based learning. You get, not entirely, like I said, I mean, there's research, it's all, that component's always going to be there, but when you start, that is 100% of your learning, or at least 90% of it, because you just don't have experience yet. So you do shift to more experience-based, and especially if you're a coach, just because you run into so many situations. I mean, you're bound to run into just about everything if you do it long enough and have enough clients.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Okay. Next question from Francis Agua. Can HCG be used with a nandrolone only cycle at 300 milligrams? I assume he means the nandrolone to give some estrogen production. Okay, I can take this one if you want. Yeah, you can. Many people have done it. People usually use between 100, 150 units of HCG every other day or 3 times a week, and you'll notice that will keep your total test within the sort of physiological range. But what you will notice, obviously, apart in comparison to using testosterone attached to an ester, is that there'll be some large fluctuations, very much more like your circadian rhythm would endogenously pulse testosterone. So yeah, you absolutely can do that. My bigger question would kind of be why. Most people do that because they want to keep testicular function working with some kind of Leydig cell stimulation, but I'm not too convinced that that is the case. In fact, it may produce greater oxidative stress via free radicals, oxidative stress to the testes specifically, through the large aromatization and estrogen properties. You may actually be doing the opposite of what you're trying to do, which I assume is keeping your testicular function up. I've been quite vocal about not being bothered about trying to maintain endogenous testosterone levels whilst using exogenous androgenic anabolic steroids anyway, especially something like nandrolone that really does shut down your HPG axis very hard. What I wouldn't do is like smash a load of HCG at any time, because that will definitely cause some oxidative damage to the testes. So like drip feeding is a better idea if you want to somehow keep your testicular function ticking over and keep some aromatization in there. Yeah, you can do it, but I don't see efficacy in it. I wouldn't recommend it. Also, I wouldn't recommend running an nandrolone only cycle at 300 milligrams, because that's just such a tiny amount of nandrolone. I mean, you could, but you know, shutting down your HPG axes and then having to use HCG just so that you can use such a small dose of an anabolic, it doesn't really seem worth it to me. I'd make sure to get some kind of DHT in there outside of your own 5AR reduction that will come from your endogenous testosterone. Although I just don't like the whole mixed signals of kicking up endogenous T and injecting something that shuts down your HPG axis. I honestly don't see the point. I think this is just mental masturbation, and I don't think that anybody using anabolics should be using them without the lifelong commitment, realistically. Otherwise you end up with things like this, situations where you're just trying to mitigate side effects.
Yeah, that last bit was what I was going to add, is that you know, inevitably with 300 milligrams, you probably don't have enough aromatization, so your estrogen will be a little bit low. But I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, if you do want to run that low of a dose for whatever reason, just add testosterone, you know, so at least enough to achieve the estrogen levels that you need. And then, but again, you know, like you said, if you're going to use it and you're worried about, you know, not having enough aromatization, you probably 300 is very tentative. I mean, you could always just use more if it's a nandrolone, especially if it's a nandrolone only. You're completely wasting your time. I wouldn't even recommend 300 milligrams nandrolone only, because you won't have enough estrogen and it's probably not going to do shit anyhow. So
yeah,
I agree
for sure. Yeah, just won't bother. Next question from Jesus Giles. This one's for you, Austin. Did you manage to get back to the States okay? Did Joe take you to many homeless refuges or Camden?
Do you guys have a lot of homeless refuges there?
Maybe where he lives.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we do here too, in big cities. But yeah, we made it home. All good. Well, I mean, truthfully, we didn't really venture much out of Northampton. Really? I mean,
No, we didn't. We didn't at all. Apart from to go to the airport.
no, we did the airport and we rode the train from. That was about it. So yeah, not much going on.
Yeah. And he asked, did we go Camden? No, we didn't. I like Camden though. Adam, what's your problem with Camden? I think Camden's cool. Another one from Gary. Debunk/rebunk the 382-day fast. Maths seems to have only made it all the more controversial because the blimp have made it through to the end on mere electrolyte sups and his own self-inflicted blubber. Can the PubMed be trusted, or is it a sketchy? Is that seed of doubt in itself as heretical? Gary, just shut up, man, and ask one question without a ridiculous bit of blurb. Right. The question is essentially, is that 382-day fast possible?
So wait, go before you do that, because somebody it got brought up somewhere. It was outside of the group. I can't remember who.
It's in the group.
Well, no.
You'd have seen it.
Somebody brought it up to me because you shared that study a while ago. It was a while back. So, and they in the math, they thought the math was in too. But what we don't, and maybe it said this in the study because I didn't read the whole thing. But I don't know if we knew what his caloric maintenance was beforehand, so we really don't even know what the deficit was, total to predict the weight loss. And even then, there's going to be a huge amount of adaptation in 300 and whatever days. So I don't know how you can. Yeah, there's no way that you can predict the weight loss.
No, you can't mathematically somehow plot that. But Ben Stevens, the one of the admins in the OPD group, did actually do some maths and say that it all checked out. So you got that there. He did post up all of his calculations. But at the end of the day, like, to answer the question that Gary's going on here, like, is it possible to fast that long, supplementing with micro and phytonutrients and electrolytes? Yes, it is. It's entirely possible. It's within the realms of possibility. Did this man fast that long? I don't know. It wasn't a metabolic ward study. I think it was initially, but he was tracked for a while in metabolic ward, and I think then he was free to go home, but his weight loss sustained, so that would tell me that he probably did keep up the fast. Even if he didn't, like, he still lost ridiculous amount of weight and kept it off. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't there with him, but yes, it's physiologically possible to fast for that long when you have that much stored body fat to utilize as energy.
And I would probably say too, just from if he were, let's say he was in the ward for 100 days and then they let him out and he did break the fast. I think that the metabolic and hormonal cascade that would have happened in his body and his brain, he would have went nuts. The study would have stopped. Think about being very hungry and then introducing a big refeed. Yeah, I couldn't imagine that if he would have broke fast, that probably would have been the end of it, because he probably would have went off the rails.
Yeah. And his last question was like, can you trust PubMed? Well, you just got to remember that PubMed just hosts studies. There are studies on there that are a load of shite, like Jim Stepani's studies and Jacob Wilson's studies on HMG, but just, you got to take the data for what it is, and, that's the best we can do,
Yeah.
You
have to be able to.
Toby Kurz. Sorry.
No, I was going to say it just comes down to being able to read, know what you're reading.
Yeah. And I mean, all we can do with the data is a best guess at the end of the day, especially in bodybuilding. There's still a great deal of objective anecdote, like we were talking about earlier. Toby Kurz asks, does it matter how many times post-injection You get blood drawn to establish the perfect cruise dose. I was at 920 total test and 50 E2 with blood drawn circa 48 hours post-injection with 150 milligrams of testosterone.
Okay. I can do this one if you want.
Go on, man.
Yeah, I mean, actually, right, looking at it, that looks pretty much perfect to me, honestly. 2 days, still going to be pretty elevated in the 900s with 150. I mean, just from my experience with myself and with people, that seems pretty accurate. It's obviously going to fall depending on dose frequency and when you get it drawn. But yeah, I mean, you could. I've been doing it for a while. I have to get blood work done for my doctor. I mean, I've had it drawn, 2 days, 48 hours, 72 hours, 4 days, whatever, 5 days. I mean, yeah, inevitably it's going to dip some, but I don't think you have to be super anal about it and try every single different day. I mean, yeah, you pretty much going to have a good idea. 2 days, 48 hours in the mid 900s seems pretty darn close to what I would expect.
Yeah, I can echo that. It looks about right on paper for an average kind of metabolizer of androgens and average amount of aromatization. And, to the question like the perfect cruise dose, man, I don't know what the perfect cruise dose is. That's up to your risk to reward ratio and your goals of your cruise. But if we're talking like TRT cruise dose, yeah, you look about right. That estrogen is in quite a nice upper range. If you're not symptomatic of any estrogenic symptoms, then I'd say you're doing quite nicely around there.
Yep.
If TRT is the goal of the cruise.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've only got one more question, and we're closing up on an hour, so pretty fly. The last question's a silly one from Gary. Could you possibly repeat everything you said on the Evolutionary podcast?
Yeah, I guess
I did listen to it, man, and
audio was bad. He told me that it was a little spotty, but I had no idea it was that bad. But whatever. I guess I'm not going to redo it. Fuck it.
Nah. Have you listened to it?
I listened to a little bit of it. I haven't listened to the whole thing. Oh well.
Yeah. So Gary, just stick to this one, mate, because this is where all the good stuff happens anyway. Shout out to the guys at Evolutionary. I am a listener. So that's all the questions we got here. I just saw that photo that you sent through to me, man. You're looking grainy, man. That's nice.
Yeah, that's that was one shot I really wanted to get, like kind of the branch Warren leg press shot. That's what that is right there.
Yeah. Do you always leg press barefoot?
Well, no, but I had flip flops on, and we decided the flip flops didn't look very good in the photos. They kind of threw it off.
So I can't train with shoes on. It's a mental thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you notice that? Yeah.
You like press barefoot then?
I do everything barefoot.
Nope.
I've had Jazz down A&E this week for dropping a dumbbell on her foot. Or she dropped a dumbbell on her foot.
I know she did. I actually. So right after it happened, not right after, it was probably a couple hours after because it was already swollen. She sent me a message, and I talked to her for a minute, and then she asked, I'm not putting her on the spot here, but it was funny. She asked, do you think it's broken? I said, how the fuck would I know? I'm thousands of miles.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
I had the same conversation, bless her. He's like, is it broken? Well, I don't know. Let me just look through your skin. And I'm like, what does it fucking matter if it is? You've still got to do your cardio and train, so fuck it. Like,
yeah, I was like, I'm not a doctor, and I'm about thousands of miles away from you, so I'm sorry.
Those questions make me laugh from clients. Like, yeah, not going to get into that. But no, I've been given a tough love, bless her. Like you have to. Like, she's saying my foot hurts. I said, I don't care. Just go and get your steps in. Just get it done. I don't want to hear any of that.
Yeah, I told her too to keep an eye on it for, obviously if it gets progressively worse, then that's probably maybe a fracture or something. But if it's not getting any worse, She's got it.
I'll tell you a funny story of something that happened earlier this year to me. So I've been begging the owner of our gym to get a seated calf raise for a long time.
Well, you have one.
And pardon?
I said you have one now. I saw it.
Well, yeah, he got one in. He got one in earlier this year. So but I didn't even notice it. And actually, the funny thing is, I walk in. So every day I walk to the gym, go up to the counter, put my bag down, get my shaker out, get any bands or anything out that I need to get out, take my shoes and my socks off. So I did all of that and turned around and I walked clean into this new seated calf raise and broke 2 toes on my right foot.
Yeah.
So this thing,
you had no idea it was there.
No, I walked straight into it because I do the same thing every day. And then 2 weeks later, same thing. I broke 1 toe on the other foot.
That sucks. That hurts so bad too when you smash a toe like that.
I know. And they both went black and huge and were just like floppy, you know. And one of them's all like cocked up now. Yeah. One of them's all bent out of shape. But I was like refusing. I was like, I'm not gonna have it cast. And I kept training. I was training calves and doing my steps every day. It was a hellish month or so.
Did you tell? You probably told me about it. I mean,
I think I mentioned it, but I'm not like, you know what I'm like. It's like nothing's going to change, or I'd go crazy. So
I understand. It's like it's funny with like our you know, like when I shoot Jason over updates, I don't say shit about how I feel or anything. Just like I mean, why? Doesn't matter. You know.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, I do. Like, admittedly, I'm like that, but I encourage clients not to do that at all. I'm like, tell me exactly how you're feeling. I want to know the biofeedback. But then when I check in with you, I'm like, yeah, I'm cool, man. All good. All going good. Yeah. But then it's like, so I've just...
You would tell me, you know, if there was a glaring issue, you would tell me. So you know...
Yeah.
You know that you know what to say and when to say it. It's like a difference. So what's the point of me saying, just boogering up and filling up update space with, yeah, I'm really tired and everything sucks. Like, why? Why does that matter? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can do about it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, take 15 units of growth hormone and then it's like, yeah, I'm pretty tired. It's like, no shit. You know, yeah, that's gonna happen anyway. So either take less or shut up.
Right. Yep.
On which note, I'm gonna have my last meal and then check in with you in the morning.
All right. Wait. Yeah. Yeah. Tomorrow's Monday. Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be the usual. Hey, man, no difference. All the feedback the same. Like, yeah, cool.
I look forward to it.
Nice one. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Bit more of a relaxed one this week. I hope that we answered your questions well. Thanks for the questions. There were some good ones in there. And shout out to our sponsors, Metaform, hyaluronic acid. Jesus Christ, what is that?
Did I make a noise?
Yeah, some crazy high-pitched noise.
Sorry, I don't know. Oh, well. I'll mute my...
It sounds like scraping like a fork along a plate or something.
No, I just opened a drawer. Maybe that was it.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, big shout out to our sponsors, Metaform, hyaluronic acid based site enhancement. The rapid loading is in the UK now. Pretty much all sold out. So if you do need some, then I'd get it quick because I think there's only a few bottles left. Had some good feedback on that thus far. Shout out to Team Metal Co Clothing. Alex, get the new website over to me, boy. Shout out to Compact, KOMPAK.store for all your show day needs. Order a one-stop shop box. You know, all you bikini girls, your shows are coming up. You're within the 3-month out range, all your PCA and 2 bros goes, so you need to be thinking about it. So get on the website, get it ordered, and yeah, good stuff. Anything to leave the guys on, Austin?
No, not today. I think we have some guests lined up. You mentioned one, and I have another one potentially, so we'll probably have guests the next couple of weeks, but business as usual.
Hey, we have Dr. Scott Stevenson coming on next week.
Oh, so he is confirmed then?
Yes, sir, and we are talking about something I love to talk about, something that has been both a joy and a bane to my life, and that is the biological interindividuality of anabolic steroid use.
Perfect topic. Yep, and because he's already spoken on that with, well, it wasn't specific to anabolics, but he's spoken on the topic in general terms.
Something I've been doing some big personal research on recently, so it'd be cool to discuss some stuff with Scott. The more I look into it, the more I move away from looking at the androgen receptor itself, because everything seems to be so acute at the androgen receptor, and I'm looking more so at things like clearance rates of anabolics, upregulation in AR expression that occurs down the line via gene transcription, and just how acute that is. So stopping looking at the androgen receptor itself when we're trying to look at differences in response levels to anabolics, but we can get more into that with someone a lot smarter than me, Dr. Scott.
Looking forward to that one. Yeah, Scott's always a pleasure, and he's such a nice guy too. So.
Oh yeah. That's what you got to love. He's a real gentleman, Scott. So, in fact, talking about someone that's been big mentor, like the question, Dr. Scott is actually someone I probably have followed for the longest time and learnt so much from. So that's one name I'd absolutely put in there.
And I would also say that, you know, when somebody asks about training or just someone to follow, he's one of the few people that I generally agree on with just about everything. So I would feel comfortable suggesting.
Yeah. Here's a very nice mix of actual in the trenches anecdote and science, which is really what every good coach should have a balance of, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, what is Scott? I mean, Scott's like, shit, is he in his 50s, right?
Yeah, it must be. He looks amazing. He's always shredded.
Well, he's in his 50s. He's been lean for a really long time, and he's white. And the white guy, like older white guys, always have that thick skin.
Yep.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. That is one of the advantages of being white when you're a master's bodybuilder.
I've got that seal skin, man. I think I'll always have it.
It'll get better. Mine was actually the same exact way.
Do you know what? Talking about gene transcription, this is something I've been looking into. People that require TRT young, and actually the difference in their androgen to estrogen gene transcription over time, and generally people that have had like prepubescent gyno, I find anecdotally with clients like that, and like people with myself, require a much higher total androgen or more so DHT level to estrogen level to look a certain way than other people. And like, without trying to be racially discriminative here, that's something that I never see with black people. And when I look at some black clients' blood work, their DHT ranges always seem to sit a little bit higher on relative dosages.
You know what? And I would agree with that, because I fall into that description myself pretty nicely, like as far as ratios go.
I've found whenever I increase Masteron or Trenbolone or Winstrol, I just look better straight away. And I know that they're cosmetic drugs, but even on a stack like I'm running now, where my estrogen is very high, something you'd call like a wet stack, you know, a lot of Deca and Test, even just adding little bits of Masteron or Proviron or Trenbolone makes a huge difference to the cosmetic effect of my physique, just narrowing that range, even though the anabolic property is so low.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree. Like I said, I think that I've seen it firsthand. And when we've seen it with you, absolutely. Yeah.
Up the trend, always.
Well,
right.
Yeah. That might not be the best DHT solution.
No. Up the Tren and Masteron. You know, it's something like, of all people, Boston Lloyd the other day I heard say, he goes, there doesn't seem to be a limit on how much Tren and Masteron I can take and not look better. And it's like, actually, you are onto something there for you, probably.
I wonder I'd be curious to see if we had good enough, good enough genetic testing and stuff. I mean, we have to some extent, but I'd be curious to see what his genetics are like in terms of clearance times and just general response to anabolics. I'd be curious. I mean, because he looks good.
Yeah, because
he does look good, but
he looks great,
taken into
and he used to look shit.
well, yeah, but you take it into context with dosages too, and you could say, would he look better if he had a better response? You know what I mean? So you never know.
There could be something in his sort of upregulation of the androgen receptor over time from his past heavy use as well, that he's able to use less now. And I say use less now, he still uses over 4 grams year round from what I can gather from his post, but in the past he's run those 9 to 12 gram cycles, and funnily enough had clean blood work. Did you see that?
Yep, I've seen that, and I think that you're onto something with just over time running the higher doses, because you actually I can't remember who the hell posted research on this too. Trying to think of who it was. Basically, you're getting more from the anabolics the longer you use them.
Yeah.
Which is ironic, because it's the opposite of what most people say.
Yeah, and I mean, this is by no means a recommendation. I'm just kind of postulating here, but you hear the anecdote, and it's something I say all the time as well, just because, sort of you have to say it, and it is generally best case practice to use the least amount needed to reach the end goal, right? But let's assume now, whilst we're younger, when we can get away with more, maintain relatively good health markers, maybe we can push the boat out for a time now, so that later we could pull back and maintain or even progress using less when we're in a little bit of a worse situation,
Yeah. I mean, we had that discussion too. So how fast do you get to that point? Type of, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's definitely an interesting topic, because I think that you could look at that from both angles.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But we shall talk about that more next week.
Yeah, man, for sure. I'm gonna go and eat. Can't be fucked to cook, so I'm gonna do some quark and some gluten-free cornflakes, I think.
I'm gonna have some lettuce and some tuna.
Oh, do you know what? I might make some turkey, but I don't know. I got a protein and carb meal, but I can't really be bothered to cook.
Yeah, I hate cooking.
Client sent me some really nice hydrolyzed whey as well.
Oh, there you go.
That, yeah, someone. I'm not going to mention who. One of my clients sponsored by quite a large company, and he got a boot full of this hydrolyzed whey. He must have over $1,000 in there. He was like, "Do you want a pot?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, that stuff's like £200."
That shit's expensive.
Yeah, digests really well. That implemented some betaine this week, and do you know what? The difference is ridiculous.
Yeah. See, I suspected that's what it was, just from because the reason was because if you look at total volume of calories, like your calories aren't ridiculously high, but the only thing that stood out to me was protein intake that could have potentially been slowing down, because your fats aren't high either. We know you assimilate glucose well, so I'm like, it has to be protein. You need more stomach acid.
Yeah. Like my protein and carb meals now, like it's like I haven't eaten anything. But my protein, fat, veggie meals, even though the fat's still quite low, I'm still eating it, and I'm a bit like, ugh.
Well, we just won't go any higher on that for sure.
Yeah. Got to load in the carbohydrates, man. Anyway, I'm talking shit now. So, yeah, thanks, dude. Guys, this is going to be out tomorrow, so Monday. So, again, apologies for the delay. Please go and check out our sponsors. All the links are going to be in the thingy box below, wherever you're checking this out. And we'll catch you guys next week, hopefully with Mr. Scott, not Mr. Scott, I should say Dr. Scott Stevenson, talking about biological interindividuality of anabolic steroids. So, cheers, guys.